Good morning. Are we having fun yet or what? Yeah. Wow. Today at the end of the service, we're going to meet right over here. Usually takes 15, 20 minutes. This is our annual business meeting for the whole church. This is when you would have a chance to ask the elders anything you need to know. We definitely go over the budget every year. Any questions, line by line, what you have about that, what our plans are for the budget next year. We have a couple other things that we have to consider this year as well, kind of church business. So this is our annual business meeting. That means it only happens once a year. And we sure love for you to stay and listen to what's being discussed and some of the thoughts from the hearts of our elders here. So looking forward to that. This coming Saturday, Mighty Men of Ottumwa meeting at Point of Grace Church. Pastor Paul Hughes, this is the first time they've hosted this event. Now I want you to know that some of the pastors are wondering if the Mighty Men breakfast thing has kind of run its course. And they're trying to decide whether or not we should continue to do this if the men are interested and want to participate. So if you have an opinion on that, you might want to come Saturday and offer that opinion to see what we want to do with this ministry, if it needs to sunset or if it needs to become something else or that type of thing. Obviously, the sign project's coming along. We're going to be looking at that next week, so if you want to participate in that, that's fine. We're studying the inner man of faith. We're at the faith of Samuel. We're kind of looking at his backstory of how he got here. Picture of a typical shepherd prophet from Israel dress at that time. We're talking about being an example in your faith. So we're going through Hebrews chapter 11. We're talking about the life of Hannah, who was Samuel's mother, and she had to surrender to whatever God had for her. Hannah surrendered Samuel her blessing before she even received him. So some of us that are waiting on blessings, maybe God is waiting for us to surrender that blessing to him. God can bring life to a weary, fighting heart. God can bring life to dead dreams. God can bring life to dead bodies. He can put his dreams in place of your dreams. And his dreams are so much better. Isn't that awesome? Anybody here experienced that? God took your dream and made it even more amazing. Anybody at all? Seriously? Put your hands up. Put them together. Yes, God does that. We serve a God like that. So Hannah got way more than she ever dreamed when she said, if you'll give me a son, I'll give him back to you. When she surrendered to God, her dream exploded. And she had to fulfill her commitment, and God did beyond what she could ask or think. And I have to warn you, I warned you last time I preached here, as a general rule, the blessings of God leads to attack from Satan. And most people take the bait of Satan. Very few people, 99 men out of 100 can handle failure. Only 1 in 100 can handle success. That's a famous quote that goes all the way back to Abraham Lincoln, I believe. With blessings comes more challenge. With blessings comes more challenge. Because if you say, God, if you bless me, I'll share the gospel of Christ, which is the correct answer. Why else would God bless you? So if you actually say, give me this blessing, I'll give it back to you for the gospel of Christ, Satan's going to take notice. And he's going to come after you in a new and exciting way. Because you're attacking his kingdom with the gospel. You cannot go with God and stay where you are. You have to make this decision every day. Hannah kept Samuel for several years. As soon as he got probably out of the toddler stage, she had to go back to Shiloh and give him to Eli and remind Eli of her commitment. Now, before we get into today's message, one last thing that I didn't get into from last week's message is Elkanah, Hannah's husband, tried to comfort her. They had 3 feasts a year, and she was sad at the feast. Have you ever been to a family reunion, somebody be all out of shape? Doesn't that just ruin the whole thing? And you got to go around and tiptoe around them, and they're on eggshells, and you go in there and say, what's wrong? Why aren't you joining the feast? Well, this was kind of Hannah. She was brokenhearted. She really didn't feel like feasting. And Elkanah tried to comfort her. And you know, men, we're just men. You know, and sometimes, you know, we don't know what. And so he gave her the best portion of food. kind of honored her. He didn't know what to do. Poor guy. They're having a feast and everybody's having a great time and she's not happy. And, men live for the women to be happy. You don't know that, ladies. I just revealed that to you. But men brag about how happy the old lady is. That didn't sound very nice. But at the water cooler, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, oh, my wife is so happy. I got a new car for my wife the other day. And some guy says, wish I could make a trade like that. Okay, you'll get that later. Okay, maybe you'll get it now. And so he tried to give her stuff, and he said, aren't I better to you than 10 sons? This poor guy's heart was broken because his wife's heart was broken. He noticed, he cared, he tried to honor her. And he said, aren't I better to you than 10 sons? That wasn't the issue, ladies. Hannah's heart could not be filled by Elkanah. Hannah's heart could not be filled by Samuel. Hannah's heart could only be filled by God. You remember that? And if your heart's not filled by God, no one else can fill it. No amount of husband, no matter how great they may be. We got some great husbands, didn't we? No amount of children, no matter how great they are, when you want to kill them. Ladies, I just want to run this up the flagpole. Only God can fill that part of your heart. Don't look to a man to do it, or it'll be empty. Don't look for this life and children and gifts. They were wealthy. They had the perfect American dream life. But her heart was empty because she was waiting on God. Wow. Men, no matter how wonderful your marriage is, make sure your wife is connecting to God. Help her blossom. Become. Get her in whatever community, get her read, study, whatever you got to do to help her blossom and reach her potential. So we're going to start off with, this is kind of an introduction, foundational message to looking at the life of Samuel and the situation he was born into. So we're going to look at a question that has plagued me forever as I deal with people. And I'm kind of wondering, this seems awful simple, and maybe I'm just simple-minded. I'm sure that's true, but it seems like there's two big questions. The first one is, what's not to like? And the other one is, you're not the boss of me. And these questions plague me, and they've bothered me for a long time. So, the foundational principles of the Old Testament, I'm telling you this story for this reason. The gospel is the good news. The gospel is the good news. The gospel is the only good news. The gospel is the goodest good news. There is no good news like the gospel. I am truly thankful. I am. And I am truly grateful. Do we get frustrated and have irritations and maybe something happens and kind of gets us down a little? But at the end of the day, the Old Testament stories are to show us that the gospel is the good news. And that's what the New Testament is about. The word gospel means good news. And the goodest good news that we have is the gospel. Is that true? Is everything okay? Y'all here? Y'all staring at me? Is something wrong? Okay, good. We're all here. It's kind of warm in here today, so y'all be nodding off. Y'all brought your blankets, and the air conditioning didn't kick on. Because the Bible says that I have to preach the whole counsel of God, I have to preach the bad news of man as I preach the good news of the gospel. And to be honest with you, I don't like it. To be honest with you, I would love to be a pastor who could just preach out of the parts of the Bible that we like. Wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't you want to come? Every day just tell you how wonderful you are and how great everything is? Well, folks, I would prefer that. But I have to preach the whole counsel of God. And the Old Testament has as many failures or more stories of failures than it has successes. Some guy found that there were 400 men leaders in the Bible in the Old Testament. 400. 80 finished well. 40 finished strong. I don't know how you define that, and I don't care. The point is, 1 in 100 men will finish strong. So we're going to have to talk about Eli and his failed fatherhood and his failed leadership and his failed being a judge and his failed sons. I don't want to talk about that. I want to go find all the success stories. But what I want you to know is, I want you to remember two things about the foundation of this whole thing. It's about the good news. It's about the gospel. Number one. And number two. Two things that I believe are true about me. Now, you guys may laugh your head off because you may not see this at all, but it's okay. It's how I perceive myself. Number one, I am probably the most idealistic, completely consumed, dedicated person that you'll ever meet. I believe in love. I want you to know that. There is nothing in this universe that is more transformational than love. 99% of all music ever written was about love. Sappy love songs. All of your stories, all of your dramas is about somebody loving someone or hating someone and all the problems they had to go through that, whether it was you got mail or you got a machine gun. It's the same story. Somebody's trying to rescue somebody because they love them. I prefer the machine gun movies. Let's go watch a movie. How many people die in the first 2 minutes? No one? No. Chick flick. I see it coming. I sat through Les Miserables. I sat through it like this. I told my wife, if those people would just talk, this would be a 20-minute movie. I took my daughter to Cats. My favorite ones are named Target and Bullseye. No, I like cats. I've got pet cats. No, I in my heart, at the end of the day, even though there's frustrating times, I believe that I'm a complete idealist when it comes to the foundational power of the love of Jesus Christ. There is nothing stronger. I believe that any human that truly tastes the goodness and love of God will never forget that encounter. And I believe it's life-changing. I often pray that people would be overwhelmed with the taste of the love. You see, you can see God from over there. You can hear God from over there. You can smell God from over there. You can touch God from as far away as possible, but when you taste Him, bring Him in. Taste and see that the Lord's good. So I have to preach a message that challenges us, but the messages are about the good news of the love of Jesus Christ. And God has recently told me, stop trying to convict them that they're wrong and show them that Jesus is right. Because of the four faces of authentic manhood, most of us think we're warriors. And the problem is we fight for the wrong things. Me especially. I fight for everything. My challenge of being the warrior face of a man is to stand down, not to fight more. Maybe some of you can identify with that. I can't convict anyone. I'm not even very good at convincing them, so I punch them in the face. Get a bigger Bible. Boom. Hit him on the head. I am not stepping away from the truth at all, but I'm taking a big step towards grace because Jesus was filled with, in this order, grace and truth. And I am a complete believer in love, the transformational power of love of Christ. The second thing is the good news and the hope that it brings. There's a phrase that I came across in my studies. I'll go ahead. It's a couple weeks away, but I'll give it to you. When Samuel was sleeping in the tabernacle next to the curtain of the Holy of Holies, it says it was before the lights went out. The lamps burned out. Now, if you study the temple, there was a menorah, and according to the law, what was supposed to happen? They were never supposed to go out. The light was always supposed to be lit. Now, the cool thing about that phrase is, that phrase in other places of the Bible is used to say that the hope of God never goes out. I'm a big believer in that. I sat for a week with my family, had a wonderful vacation. When you go as a big group, it's cheap. And me and Doug talked till about midnight one night. Ladies talking about, hair and nails. And me and Doug are talking about, the world. And we're talking about, how bad things can get. And we got ready to go to bed. Doug said, boy, I feel a lot better because of this conversation. And it made me laugh. I'm going to tell you something. No matter what happens, we have hope. No matter what happens, no matter how bad it is for you or how bad it is for us, there is an opportunity of Jesus Christ and the good news of the gospel in it. At the end of the day, folks, I want you to know the flicker of hope never goes out in me, ever. And I've talked to some of us grandpas. And I've said, hey, here's a scenario, for example. If the United States had to go through a Great Depression, and we had to move in together and not kill each other, and we had to eat rice and beans way more than we do now, and we lost our retirement, and we lost our savings, some of us would lose lots of possessions. If the United States went through a Great Depression for 10 years, and when that was over, the United States was connected to God again, would it be worth it? So when things start to look like they're going downhill, there is hope. When you hit bottom and it's Jesus Christ, you have hope. So as we go into another story about these sinful leaders that I don't enjoy preaching, I want you to know these two things about it. Now, I've been confused for a long time, and Hannah versus Eli is a great story. What's not to like? What's not to like? Elkanah was a rich agricultural baron of some sort. They went to the tabernacle 3 times a year. That means they could take 3 big vacations a year. They took way more offerings than they had to, which means they had a real generous spirit. How many of you love that? It is fun to have a generous spirit. It's just fun. And so he was wealthy. He got a wife. She didn't have a kid, so he got another wife. Had a bunch of kids. Then Hannah had Samuel. Then Hannah had 3 more sons and several more daughters. This guy is living the American dream. So my question is, what's not to like? Now, I get to visit with you all. I get to hear your life stories. It's such a blessing for me. And here's how the typical one goes. Yeah, well, since we've come to know the Lord, things have gotten a lot better. Man, we got tied into some people at church, and we quit drinking, drugging, partying. Our marriage has gotten better, and we go to some of these groups, and we read these books, and our marriages are getting better, and we're kind of loving each other more. And you know what? It seems like we're not fighting about finances as much as we used to. And in fact, after I became to know the Lord, I got a better job. Primarily because I showed up every day and wasn't drunk. And I got a better job. And, things have smoothed out. And my kids, I have a pretty good relationship with them. And we do all the stuff that we do with kids. And since I got to know the Lord, things have even the bad stuff, I have someone to pray with me. That's not the like. Well, tell me about your family. Hey, my brother and my sister, they really had it rough, and they had it rougher than I did. They're kind of coming to the Lord now. And you know what's happening? I can see it. They're kind of getting straightened out a little bit, and they're not acting stupid, and they're kind of getting their money together, and they're really bad in debt, and they really had some bad habits, and they're making some new friends, and, things are kind of changing for them, and I'm so excited. And, I'm going to invite them to some church. They need to go to church somewhere. We're going to try some different churches. I'm going to take them to some different churches. We're going to find one. And then maybe someday they'll get in a small group, and their life will start to grow in the Lord. And maybe they won't get divorced and kill each other or something, and it'll be good. And I can really see, and it's exciting because my brother, my sister, they're kind of getting together with God. And wow. And I want to say, what's not to like? You guys ever think this way? But almost every family, and what else? Well, I got this brother or sister, and they don't want nothing to do with God. They just go from man to man to man, to woman to woman to woman. Their life just crash, 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 crisis, crisis, chaos. Well, I've invited them to church. I've asked them. I gave them a Bible. When we go to their house at Christmas, I ask the blessing. Does this sound familiar to anybody? And I want to get this person who's far from God to taste the love of God. I want them to have hope, the way that we have hope. And I want to say to them, look at your brothers and sisters that are walking with God or moving towards God. What's not to like about their life? Well, God's not the boss of me. I believe in a higher power, but he would never judge me. You're not the boss of me. Does anybody else struggle with this? It seems to me that the what's not to like about God should be obvious to the people who are living their life saying, you're not the boss of me. Does anybody else struggle with this besides me? Our country and the world still claims these as our highest values. These are the values of Jesus Christ. These are his character. These are the fruit that the Spirit produces in the life of the believer. They are the primary values that this nation claims to have. And they are the primary values that the men of this nation say they want to live by and that they want to be known by. And those are the values that the Buddhists claim to want to be known by, and that the Hindus claim they want to be known by, and that the Islamists, the Muslims, claim they want to be known by. These are the values that the world claims are the highest cultural values of every culture. If you sat down with them, they would say, absolutely, we want to be known as loving. Even to our enemies. The most recognized worldwide quote from Jesus Christ of all times is, love your enemies. We marvel at those that do. Who doesn't want to live this way? What's not to like? Joyful, even in difficult circumstances. Do you know if you go through a tragedy and you are joyful, you'll be on Good Morning America? They put people up there regularly that went through some huge trial and they forgave this person that killed their family member. And then they take out Jesus Christ. Lady was on last week. They were talking about her Navy SEAL husband that died. And she said, how would he want to be remembered on NBC? And she said he would want to be remembered for his love for Jesus Christ. By the end of the day, they took out the word Jesus Christ because it would offend some of the listeners. We want to be remembered as loving. What's not to like about living as loving and joyful people or peaceful? Folks, there's a whole city of people over here that are under demon possession and demon oppression that are meditating not on the Word of God to try to find peace. They literally sit on a little trampoline and bounce and empty their bowels. Sorry, that's crude, but that's the truth. Trying to get into a state of relaxation of inner peace. I'm not making fun of them. They need to taste the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's my prayer for them. We have relaxation techniques. We go to classes. We all want to be calm, cool, and collected in a godly way. We all want to be cool under crisis. Stress is the number one killer of people today. Everyone is looking for peace. Here it is, free, growing in your life from the fruit of the Spirit. What is not to like? Patience. How many of us want to be extra loving when it's extra hard? How many of us want to care about even the most difficult people? How many of us want to show love to the people that we disagree with the most strongly? What's not to like? Kindness. Kindness is taught from our earliest memories. Being kind to others. What did you learn in school today? Sharing. Mine. Sharing. Being nice to others. Giving to those who are less fortunate. Not pointing out people's mistakes or handicaps or flaws or faux pas. Kindly covering other people's exposed shame or embarrassment. This is how we want to be remembered. Stepping up and beside the person and being kind to them. Goodness. We teach our kids by word and example how to do the right thing. Not just to not steal, but if the cashier gives us too much money back, to point that out. Say, honey, you gave me too much change. That's goodness. It's not just not doing the bad thing, it's doing the right thing. I know this room of people, and you taught your kids to do the right thing, and I'm proud of it. Doesn't matter what they do now. I mean, it matters, but they get to choose. They know the right thing to do. How many of you parents would say, my kids know the right thing to do? Yes. I know your hearts. You've taught goodness. It's called the preciousness of others. It's called the moral warehouse from Growing Kids God's Way. Goodness. Keith grabs the kids running through the coffee house. And he looks them in the face and he says, look, these older folks are really scared when you run. Because they're afraid you're going to bump into somebody and maybe knock someone down. Let's be careful and don't run because it'll make them feel safe. The preciousness of it. What's not to like, people? What is the you're not the boss of me crowd looking for? What's not to like about this? The whole world claims these values, but rejects the power thereof. I've seen Keith do it. Makes me smile. Faithfulness, the character to keep your promises, honor your commitments, living with integrity when there's an easy way out, being faithful to God, Christ, your spouse, your family, your church, your workplace. Gentleness, oh, there's one. Strength under control. Strength under control. What's not to like? Gentleness is not having the power to fight back. Gentleness is having the power to fight back and being gentle. People ask me my whole life when I had a karate class out in Denver in our school for beginners. And, how can you be a Christian and teach martial arts? And I would tell them every time, you have to be in a position of strength to show mercy. Not acting is more powerful than acting in many cases. Gentleness, strength under control, taking care of the weak, smaller, less able. I know an old guy who was about this tall, weighed about 230 pounds, named Robert Repue. He's probably dead. Look him up in the Encyclopedia of Martial Artists. He started the Navy SEAL program, made major before he went out of the Marines in 1976, taught the Navy SEAL program into the early 80s and retired. He looked like a little old grandpa. He was in the Korean War. He had a box with a necklace of people's fingers and ears on it. And he had a box of files that were top secret, that were his files from his service. One of the probably most personally hand-to-hand deadly men I've ever met. I can't imagine how many people it would take to hurt him if he didn't want you to. I know another guy that I worked with years. I got my second black belt from him. He's one of the strongest people in a different way. I don't think he could bench press 300 pounds, but he was strong in a different way. And I tell people, I don't think you could get him to defend himself. You could call him names, you could slap his face, you could kick him in the butt, you could take a swing at him, he'd probably move. You can stand this close to, you can kill somebody 12 ways standing this close to their face. Do you know that? If you were standing this close to my friend Steve, he could kick the cap off your head from the front or the back. He could swing his leg up and kick it off from the bill, or he could reach up behind you and kick it off from behind you, standing this close to your face. Some of the most gentle people I've ever met, yet some of the most powerful. And I've told people, you couldn't get Steve to defend himself. He would run, he would walk, you could spit on him. But if somebody, we talked about what do you do if you go to the mall and a bunch of guys are harassing a girl and beating her up and grabbing her and being mean. I wouldn't want to be there that day. Because Steve would rescue somebody at any risk. And so would Robert Repue. He wasn't even a Christian. These people, by human terms, with their bare hands, are so powerful, it's unbelievable, but they're so gentle. They would defend someone else, only to the point of getting them to safety. But if there were 20 people between them and safety, there'd be 20 people on the ground, I swear, I promise. Men marvel at gentleness. They marvel at it. That's the part of the movie that we remember when the good guy could smash their head open and doesn't. And all the men go, yes! Not to use your strengths. Not to make other people do your work. Not to use sarcasm when you know the perfect thing to say. Normally that comes a day later. Oh, I should have said this. But when you're in the middle of it and you got the zink and you're like, oh yes, this is it, coup de grace. And you don't. Not outthinking and embarrassing people. Not to use your logic to put them down. Not to hurt people when you could, maybe want to, because that leads to self-control. This attribute sums up all the others, and this is the one that we have the most control over. Self-discipline is mostly our choice. God will help. God does not make us obey these godly attributes by force. We are not spirit robots divinely endowed with these wonderful character traits. We have to choose 10,000 times a day to control ourselves or not. Hebrews 12, 10, and 11, God's discipline is good for us. Then you go to verse 11, but his discipline is not enjoyable for us at this time. Folks, between verse 10, God's discipline, and verse 11 is us. When you get to verse 11 and you get to the discipline part, we choose to be disciplined or not. The Holy Spirit will help us fight off Satan with the Word. Absolutely. But it comes down to our choice. He will not make you not sin. 10,000 times 10,000 times a day, men have to bounce their eyes. Men have to bite their tongue. Men have to push that thought out and take it captive and replace it with something godly. Am I right, guys? Am I right? Self-control is where gentleness leads. What's not to like? Who would not want to live this way, and why? I truly can't figure it out. Help me. Somebody write me something. Come and talk to me. We said at the last youth commission, we got to talking about why don't kids value godliness at all? I mean, I realize they're caught up in the sin of the moment and get by with whatever you can get by with, but at some point, does that stop and you want to have some quality to your life? I go into high school and teach on sumo sex. Your sexuality is supposed to be a 98-pound weakling that it's a big part of your life, but you're supposed to be in control of it. And if you feed it lusty movies and bad music and bad jokes and bad behavior and pornography, it becomes a sumo. It takes over your life. And I ask those kids, how many of you know somebody whose parents have been divorced and it really tore up the family? And how many of you know somebody whose parents are divorced? And every hand goes up every time. And I say, what was that about? Somebody cheated on somebody, didn't they? And I say, you don't want to live that way, do you? And I say, how many of you plan on passing this class? How many of you plan on getting out of junior high or high school? How many of you plan on going to college? How many of you think someday you'll probably get married? And there's a few giggles. How many of you, I'm not getting married. How many of you think someday you'll probably have kids? Everybody raise their hand. How many of you think you want to have a good job and a good life? Yes, you just planned the next 60 years of your life, kids. You're going to get out of this class, you're going to get out of this school, you're going to go to college, you're going to get married, you're going to have kids, you're going to have a great job. Immorality will destroy that opportunity. What's not to like about graduating and getting a degree and getting married and having a great marriage and kids and a good job? What's not to like about that? You guys are just staring at me today like I feel like I'm from another planet. Is there something wrong? Listening? I keep thinking something unbuttoned or something. Does anybody else think about this? What is not to like about the Christian life? When you surrender to a boss that loves you more than you love yourself and loves your kids more than you love them. And we don't think that's possible. And if this church got hit by a nuclear bomb and we instantly, without even knowing it, were vaporized, we would be in the presence of the Lord. How many of you would not think it's so bad that we all have lunch today in heaven? It wouldn't be so bad. Come on, it wouldn't be so bad. So we're going to look at this Elkanah and his family, and that Samuel comes out of this stock. And we're going to look at Eli, whose sons were scoundrels and immoral and stealing from God. I don't want to tell you this story, but it's in there, so we're going to do it. And these boys lived and died telling the God they were supposed to be serving in the temple, you're not the boss of me. While watching Elkanah and his family live the dream. So, does it really come down to this? Does it really come down to check one? Is there really just two directions? Is it really that simple? You're fleshly, sinful, you're not the boss of me, rebellion, I will find my own way to get through life. Does it really come down to what's not to like about surrendering to God and being in a trusted, godly community? Or simply You're not the boss of me. Not you, not you, not you, not you, not you. These authors with doctorate degrees that have written 80, 100, 200, 500 years of knowledge in a book from all these men that have written knowledge before them, and you buy it for $8. You can download it on your Kindle for $5.99. And there's 500 years of godly knowledge there, and my office is full of them. And you look at every one of those people, and you look at their book, and you say, you're not the boss of me. You can't teach me nothing. Is it really this simple? If it is, that's sad. Ask your friends. Somebody tell me what they say when you say what's not to like about God. Ask them, because I need to know. I got to have some answers. This plagues me for a long time. Father, I love you today. I gladly surrender to you. Lord, it's good to be back with the family. I sat in church last week and by myself, and those folks were nice, but they weren't my family. Lord, would you please, again, I beg you, and I know that you are, pour your love on the people of Southeast Iowa in just ways that they can't explain and they cannot ignore. Lord, could the love of Christ flow out of us in ways that people would taste it? Could the Spirit have fruit growing in us so much that it's falling off and dropping everywhere? That people can not only see it, but they can take one and taste it. Lord, I just pray that we would be encouraged. It's not about the economy or the election or the politics. It's not. It's about an opportunity to give people hope in Jesus Christ. Give us opportunities. And all God's people said. Any announcements?